The last person I expected to see that bright summer afternoon was the woman who had once called me family. The laughter around the resort pool echoed against the sparkling blue water, children splashed without a care in the world, and soft music floated through the warm air. It looked like the kind of perfect day people captured in vacation photos. But for me, everything stopped the moment I looked across the pool and recognized the familiar face sitting quietly beneath a white umbrella. She looked older than I remembered. Her silver hair caught the sunlight, and although she smiled politely at people walking by, there was sadness resting behind her eyes that hadn't been there years ago. It was my ex-wife's mother. The woman who had watched my marriage fall apart. The woman I hadn't seen in nearly 8 years. And neither of us had any idea that this chance meeting would uncover a truth that would change everything I believed about my past, and my future. Before we continue, if you believe kindness deserves a second chance and that forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to A Journey of Hearts. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt stories like this to life. ****. My name is Everett Nolan, and by the time I was 44, I had learned that some scars never truly disappear. They simply become part of who you are. 8 years earlier, I had signed divorce papers that felt heavier than any weight I had ever lifted. My marriage to Maren had lasted just over 9 years. We had dreamed about growing old together, filling a home with children, celebrating anniversaries, and building memories that would last forever. Instead, silence slowly replaced laughter. Long work hours became longer arguments. Misunderstandings became walls. And eventually those walls became impossible to climb. When everything finally ended, there wasn't one dramatic betrayal or unforgettable fight. Sometimes love simply dies from 1,000 tiny disappointments that nobody notices until it's already too late. After the divorce, I left our hometown. Every street reminded me of what I had lost. Every coffee shop held memories. Every park carried ghosts. I accepted a management position nearly 600 miles away and spent years rebuilding my life brick by brick. It wasn't glamorous. Most evenings I went home to an empty apartment, cooked simple meals, read books, and convinced myself solitude was easier than risking another broken heart. This vacation had been my first real break in almost 5 years. I had promised myself that for 1 week, I wouldn't think about work or regrets. Life, however, had very different plans. When I finally gathered enough courage, I walked toward the woman sitting beneath the umbrella. She looked up, narrowed her eyes for just a second, and then recognition spread across her face. The surprise was unmistakable. So was the emotion. For a long moment neither of us spoke. Time seemed to fold itself between us. Finally, she stood. Without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around me. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't forced. It felt like someone opening a door that had remained locked for years. When she stepped back, tears shimmered in her eyes. She admitted she had often wondered whether I was happy. I smiled politely, but deep inside I wasn't sure how to answer that question anymore. We decided to sit together beside the pool. The conversation started cautiously. Weather. Travel. Health. Simple topics strangers discuss. Yet we were anything but strangers. Eventually the silence returned. This time it carried the weight of unfinished history. She stared across the water for several moments before quietly telling me there were things I had never known about my divorce. I felt my heartbeat quicken. For years I had believed every painful chapter had already been written. Apparently, I had only read half the story. She explained that during the final year of my marriage, Maren had been struggling with overwhelming anxiety that she hid from nearly everyone. She had convinced herself she wasn't good enough. She believed she was holding me back professionally. She secretly feared she could never become the partner she thought I deserved. Instead of asking for help, she withdrew. Instead of explaining her fears, she buried them. I listened without interrupting. Each sentence reshaped memories I thought I understood. Arguments that once seemed irrational suddenly made heartbreaking sense. Cold silence became hidden pain. Distance became fear. Her mother confessed that she had begged her daughter to tell me everything. But shame can be louder than love. By the time Marin admitted how deeply she had been struggling emotionally, the divorce papers had already been signed. Neither of us had known the truth. I sat frozen. 8 years of anger slowly dissolved into sadness. Not because the marriage had ended, but because two people who loved each other had lost a battle neither understood. The afternoon sun drifted lower. Families packed towels into beach bags. Children laughed while chasing one another across the pool deck. Life continued moving around us while my past quietly rearranged itself. Then came another surprise. Her mother reached into her handbag and carefully removed a faded envelope. It had yellowed with age. My name was written across the front in handwriting I recognized instantly. Marin's handwriting. She explained that the letter had been written after the divorce but was never mailed. Her daughter had lacked the courage to send it. Instead, she placed it in a drawer. Years later, while helping her move into another apartment, her mother found it. She had carried it ever since, hoping fate might someday create this exact moment. My hands trembled as I opened it. The words blurred almost immediately because tears refused to stay away. The letter wasn't asking for another chance. It wasn't blaming anyone. It was simply an apology. Marin admitted she had loved me until the very end. She apologized for letting fear speak louder than honesty. She hoped one day I would forgive her. Most painfully, she hoped I would forgive myself for believing I had failed. I finished reading in complete silence. Sometimes forgiveness doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it enters quietly through a handwritten letter hidden inside an old envelope. Her mother gently placed her hand over mine. She confessed something else. Marin had never remarried. She had devoted much of her life to helping people experiencing emotional struggles similar to her own. She volunteered at community wellness programs, supported counseling initiatives, and quietly encouraged others to seek help before isolation became unbearable. Hearing that filled me with both pride and sorrow. The woman I once loved had transformed her pain into compassion. Perhaps that was the greatest form of healing anyone could achieve. We talked until sunset painted the sky in orange and gold. For the first time in years, I no longer viewed my past as a collection of failures. Instead, I saw two imperfect people overwhelmed by circumstances neither understood. The next morning, I almost canceled my early walk along the beach. Thankfully, I didn't. As waves rolled gently onto the shore, I noticed someone standing alone collecting seashells. She looked strangely familiar. When she turned around, our eyes met. Time stopped once again. It was Marin. Older. Wiser. Gentler. For several seconds neither of us moved. Then we smiled. Not the smile of former spouses. Not the smile of strangers. It was the smile of two people who had survived different storms and somehow reached the same shore. We walked along the beach for nearly 3 hours. We didn't revisit every painful memory. We didn't try to rewrite history. Instead, we spoke honestly for perhaps the first time in our lives. She told me about therapy. About learning to ask for help. About discovering that vulnerability isn't weakness. I shared my years of loneliness. My endless work schedules. My fear of trusting someone again. Neither of us pretended everything could simply return to what it once was. Some bridges, once broken, are rebuilt differently. Stronger. More carefully. By the end of our walk, something unexpected had happened. The bitterness was gone. Completely. We exchanged phone numbers. Not because we promised forever. Not because we were rushing back into romance, but because friendship built on honesty seemed possible. Sometimes healing begins with a single conversation that should have happened years earlier. Months passed after that vacation. We stayed in touch. Occasional phone calls became regular conversations. Regular conversations became shared dinners whenever work allowed. There were no dramatic declarations. No impossible fairy tale moments. Only patience, respect, and honesty. The very things our younger selves had never fully mastered. Nearly 2 years later, surrounded by a handful of close friends and family, we stood together in a quiet botanical garden. There were no extravagant decorations. No grand audience. Just two people who finally understood that love is not about perfection. It is about choosing honesty before fear. Compassion before pride. Listening before assuming. As I looked across the small gathering, I noticed her mother sitting in the front row. Tears streamed down her face. She smiled through every one of them. Without her courage beside that resort pool, none of this would have happened. One unexpected conversation had reopened a door both of us believed had been locked forever. Life rarely gives second chances exactly the way we imagine them. Sometimes they arrive disguised as coincidence. Sometimes they come through forgiveness. Sometimes they appear sitting quietly beneath a poolside umbrella on an ordinary summer afternoon. Today our home isn't perfect. We still disagree. We still make mistakes. But now we talk. We listen. We choose understanding before silence. And every anniversary reminds us that love isn't measured by never falling apart. It's measured by having the courage to rebuild when life offers another opportunity. If someone had told the younger version of me that the most important meeting of my life would happen beside a swimming pool years after a painful divorce, I would have laughed. Now I know better. Hope has a remarkable habit of appearing exactly where we least expect it. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with someone who may need encouragement today, and subscribe to A Journey of Hearts. Your support allows these stories of hope, forgiveness, and second chances to reach people who may need them the most. *** Blue Heart special request: before this story ends, please comment with one word, forgiveness, if you believe every sincere heart deserves a second chance. Your words may encourage someone reading the comments who is struggling to let go of the past. ***. As I watched another sunrise with the woman I had once believed was lost forever, I realized life doesn't always give us the ending we planned. Sometimes it gives us something even more beautiful. A wiser beginning. And in that quiet morning light, surrounded by peace instead of regret, I finally understood that the greatest miracles are not the ones that erase yesterday. They are the ones that teach us how to love again, with open hearts, healed souls, and the courage to never let silence steal happiness a second time.